Hey, this is Fireman Rob. You know, optimal performance isn't something that happens just by accident. I know this for a fact from being a fireman and doing way too many Ironman triathlons in full firefighter gear. But everybody always asks me, what's your secret? I can give you one secret. That's the right stuff hydration. Hydration is important when it comes to being present in the moment, ready to run into the fires and being capable of showing up every single time at your best. The right stuff was created for NASA, by NASA, for their astronauts. Now it's trusted by professional athletes in Major League Baseball, NBA, NFL, and most of the top-tier college sports. It's not an accident to prepare yourself to be great. If you're looking for that next edge, go to therightstuff-usa.com and enter the code FiremanRob and you will get 10% off at your checkout. This is an opportunity I wouldn't pass up. I have and still do use the right stuff. It's serious hydration for serious athletes, from the weekend warriors to those on the front lines. Make this a part of your habits to be the best you daily.
Welcome to Forged in the Fires podcast with Fireman Rob. Being a fireman, father, veteran, husband, world record holder, and Ironman, he brings stories of experience to impact your life while challenging you to live it. What do you want from your life? Why do you want it? Are you willing to go through the challenges to get there? If you have the courage to take that first step, let this podcast be the catalyst to start your fire while you bring the resilience to make it continue to burn. Our lives are made up of moments called right nows. So let's get started. Forged in the Fires podcast with your host, Fireman Rob, begins now.
We got the same blood, the same blood. Stay by your side, it's ride or die. We've got the same blood.
All right, welcome back to Forged in the Fires podcast. I'm your host, Fireman Rob. Thanks for joining us today. The guest that I have today, amazing individual who spent time in the Army, who has an amazing podcast with, and we'll get into why it's named the Jedburgh Podcast. And it's just one of those people that you want to hear from, the mindset, the background, everything that you can think about. It is so great to have you on the show today. Thanks for joining me today. Fran Racioppi. Is that right?
Racioppi. Close.
I had it written down exactly how I was going to say it. And, it was one of those things where I was like, I'm not going to ask him because I'm going to try to see, because I listened to a bunch of them and you get to that point and you go, oh, I screwed it up.
That's all right. Otherwise, your intro was great. So thank you very much. That was awesome and really, really nice. And I appreciate the opportunity to sit down with you and have this conversation. And I'm glad you reached out and love what you're doing. Love the podcast. Love the conversations that you're having, and certainly the tie-in to firefighting and stuff is really, really important to me. So I'm glad to be a part of it.
And I love it. It's always great to have another podcast host, because it kind of gives you that feeling of like, this conversation is going to go well, because I want to start off with that, because I want to start off with the Jedburgh Podcast. Tell me, I love the premise behind the name. Tell me more about that.
Ooh, we could go all the way back. We'd have to go back to World War II, because that's really
where I want to
start.
Go.
And
that's where I want to go.
Good. That's where I'd like to start. So, Operation Jedburgh was an operation in World War II. Not a whole lot of people know about it. There's only been a number of books that have been written about it. It's kind of one of those untold stories, but when you really start to get into it, you realize that it was one of those foundational operations within World War II that really set the conditions for the Allies to win. And what happened is, in summer of 1943, the Allies had come to the conclusion that they were facing, really a monumental task. Germany had invaded France. They were dug in. They had superior machine guns. They had superior weaponry all around. And the decision was made that, I'd say even the realization was made that the only way to win the war would be to invade France. And the only way to invade France was through the beaches of Normandy, was the most logical approach into the country.
Right.
But, with all of those factors, that I laid out with the German army, it was identified that this was, this had very little chance of success. I know what I'm talking about is Operation Overlord. And so the Allies came up with a plan. They said we're going to take 3-man teams, one American, one British, one French each. And we're going to select them from the entirety of the militaries of the British, the French, and the American armies, and we're going to take them to Jedburgh, Scotland, and we're going to put them in 3-man teams. And these 3-man teams are going to parachute into occupied France starting the night before D-Day, and they're going to conduct sabotage and subversion operations against the German reinforcements. So their goal was to not engage with the frontline forces, because the Allied forces coming along the beach would be engaged with the frontline forces. But by not allowing the Germans to reinforce the beaches, it was a war of attrition on the front line. Right. And so that's what they did. Starting the night before D-Day, 3-man teams, 1 American, 1 British, 1 French, parachuted behind enemy lines. They conducted sabotage and subversion operations against the Germans with the French resistance forces. They armed them, they equipped them. And there are stories where movements that should have taken German tank divisions 72 hours to do were taking 3 weeks. 4 weeks because of how much they were being disrupted by these forces.
Oh, that's amazing.
These are what I call, and what the military calls, transformative leaders, visionaries, drivers of change, those dedicated to winning no matter the challenge. They were given very little guidance, very little directive. It was do your best. You can't lose. We have no option for you to fail. And
no
what I seek to do through the Jedburgh podcast, primarily because after World War II, the Jedburghs went on to form the Operations Directorate of the CIA, along with the Office of Strategic Services, the OSS, was the clandestine arm. And then in the early 1950s, the Operations Directorate was transitioned primarily. Many of the Jedburghs were transitioned over into the Army.
Right.
And U.S. Army Special Operations Command was born. And that became the Green Berets when President Kennedy authorized the wearing of the Green Beret a few years later. And so that is my lineage as a Green Beret, back to the Jedburghs of World War II. And what I seek to do is tell the story of today's modern day Jedburghs, transformative leaders, visionaries, those dedicated to winning no matter the challenge in any industry. Because what it takes to win, what it takes to be successful, what it takes to develop a mindset that allows you as an individual, your teams, and your organization to thrive in the good times and the bad is all predicated on character and the mindset that you bring. And that was displayed by these operators back then, and it is continued to be assessed and trained today in our special operations across all components, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, you name it. They're all using this similar mindset to train their special operators, but that is applicable to anything you do, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're working at a major, Fortune 500 conglomerate, and you're in middle to junior level positions, but you seek to improve yourself to thrive and go up the ladder. Whether you're an athlete, it doesn't matter. You're a first responder, military, politician. We want to tell all those stories. We want to tell them through this lens, and we want to impact anyone who's trying to improve themselves personally, professionally, and seeking for a better version of themselves. That's what we're doing in the 4-minute version.
See, I could actually end the podcast now and be super happy, because that was amazing. I mean, that is, I love how it talks about the whole man concept, and that the components that you talked about were like, they didn't get the structure. They didn't have this. They just picked these individuals and said, this is what we need you to do. When you went into the Green Berets, what was your mindset into saying, hey, I want to step up and do this special operations? Because that's not something that's easy to do. It's not something that's kind of, in the forefront of your mind usually when you go into the military. What was your mindset?
Well, my mindset was, I don't want to move to the middle of nowhere and be a traffic reporter and a weatherman. That was honestly my mindset. And the reason was because I studied broadcast journalism at Boston University as an undergrad, and 9/11 was my junior year. And so I spent then, the last 2 years of school, formative years for so many of us, trying to watching the war in Afghanistan, watching the war in Iraq, and really thinking about how was I going to create an impact. I wanted to be a journalist. Tom Brokaw Dan Rather, Peter Jennings were my heroes. I looked up to them. I watched them every night. I dissected everything they did. I tried to emulate them in my classes, albeit poorly. And I said, when I was coming up upon graduation, because I also was a Division I athlete, and so I didn't do ROTC. I didn't do any of the pre-military programs. And I had the realization, well, if I'm going to go be a journalist, here's what it's going to look like. You're going to move to Bangor, Maine. No offense to anyone from Bangor, Maine. It's actually a beautiful place. Or you're going to go somewhere in the, to a very small
Madison,
market,
Wisconsin.
And, yeah. And you're going to be a traffic reporter, and you're going to be a beat reporter, and you're going to, work your way up. And that is an awesome. And many days I wake up and I'm like, damn, I wish I had done that. And it's an awesome job. But then I was watching these guys with beards and long hair, and they were riding horses through the mountains of Afghanistan. And I was like, damn, that's impact for me. For me, that's impact. And that's impact that I can make right now in my life at a young age. And if I want to be a reporter later on down the road, if I want to go into journalism, then I'll do it later on down the road. But right now, this is what I want to go do. This is what I feel I have to go do. And this is where I believe my impact in the world can be. And so I applied to go to officer candidate school. I got in. And shortly after I graduated from Boston University, I went into the Army. I spent a couple of years in the infantry. And when my window opened up to go to Special Forces to become a Green Beret and try out, I went and fortunately was selected and spent the rest of my career in 10 Special Forces Group.
Once you got into the Special Forces Group, and I think a lot of people, this is something that everybody always asks the questions of, is when you're in that Special Forces, once you're kind of in that high level of activity, you're in that window of like anything can happen at any time. How do you keep yourself prepared, even in those down moments? Like even maybe when you were watching the weathermen, when there wasn't a mission or an objective that you had to hit, how do you keep your mind ready to be able to go from 0 to 90 miles an hour, but you have to be controlled?
Well, number one, it's training, and training comes down to a mindset, and preparation comes down to a mindset. I give a couple of talks about this. I have a keynote called "The Discipline to Prepare," where I kind of break a lot of this down. I also it's also the tagline of the podcast: "How you prepare today determines success tomorrow." Now, I'll say these things, and I'll answer your question in a second, but I just want to caveat with we don't get it right all the time. And I was actually joking last night. I had a situation here in the last week that I can't admit to yet because I have to admit to it in a few weeks when we have some stuff coming out. So I can't release it. But I screwed up, I know what my process is. And I said to myself, I don't have to follow this process. I don't have to put this work in right now. When we get in the moment, we're just going to figure it out. And it was horrible, embarrassingly horrible, to the point that we had to go back and redo the work. And I looked at my team and I said, guys, this is on me. Like I sat here, I knew what the right answer was. I knew we had to prepare. I knew we had to put the work in up front. And I overestimated our ability to do something that we've never done. Okay. I say that for a reason. Do something we've never done at a high level the first time we're going to do it.
Yeah.
Like, so you learn these lessons, and even when we come from great organizations and we do great things. This pertains to the podcast. I've been doing this podcast for 2 years, and we've got I think we've recorded like 120 episodes, I have a process that for 120 episodes I followed. And then I got into a very big moment and was like, we're not going to do that. And absolutely fell. Right. And so you realize like this, it comes down to your preparation. It comes down to the work that you put in. It comes down to your thought process of what can I be doing now, right? And that, I believe, is the very important question. Is we set goals for ourselves, and when I talk about goals, I talk about standards, right? Goals are end states. Right. Goals are places we want to be. Standards that we set for ourselves every day in our daily activities is how we achieve those goals. If I say I want to lose 10 pounds, or I want to run, a mile a minute faster, I'm not just going to wake up tomorrow and go out and do that. I have to understand that in order to do that. I mean, I wish, right?
That'd be great, wouldn't it?
So I absolutely wish I could do that. But what I have to ask myself is, what am I going to do every single day? And what's the standard that I'm going to achieve every single day? And maybe that standard is, I'm not going to eat 4 pieces of pizza tonight. Maybe I have 2. right? Maybe I have 3, right? But maybe I instead of, having a muffin, I'm going to have wheat toast with peanut butter, right?
That just doesn't sound good though, Fran.
No, it doesn't. But am I going to feel better later? Yes. Am
exactly.
I going to go to sleep tonight and say my standard was to not eat the double chocolate chip muffin today, and I didn't do it, right? And if I compound those stats, the achievement of those standards every single day, I'm going to reach my goal. I'm going to get pretty damn close to it. Okay.
Right.
The other component of that is when I end my day, have I now asked the question of myself, what else could I have done? What else should I have done? What is my competition doing that I might not be doing? And that question becomes very important. I talk to athletes about this all the time. And then, and what happens is athletes default to, I should have done another workout. I should have done another rep. And I'm like, maybe, but maybe you should have foam rolled. Maybe you should have taken some physical therapy. Maybe you should have hit the ice bath. Maybe you should have gone to sleep an hour sooner. It's not necessarily about working harder, because sometimes working harder is also taking care of yourself, especially when we talk about elite athletes, right? So in the back of your mind, to remain competitive in anything you do, whether it's, I ask to set myself in my business every day. Every day I run a security business, and we do security consulting and security training. We do a lot of different private and public sector work with clients. And I say, what do we miss? What do we miss? Why didn't we win that contract? What can we do today to help us to prepare to win a bigger contract or another contract down the road? So we've got to ask ourselves these questions consistently, because if we just look back and say, I made it into Special Forces, I got selected. Okay, cool. I made it through the course. Now I'm on a Special Forces team. Okay, yeah, great. That's day one.
Right. That's
now what? Now what are you going to do? Same for firemen, right? The selection I've spent a lot of time with the Boston Fire Department. I mean, we did a whole episode, episode 75, with the Boston Fire Department, and that's a rigorous selection and training course. Same for the police. Same for NFL draft. I just had a chance to sit down with 2-time Pro Bowl tight end Julius Thomas. His episode will come out in a couple of weeks.
Oh, nice.
And we talked about this. We talked about you get selected in the draft. And that's a culminating event. But guess what? This is day 0. Because now you have to earn your place here every single day. You didn't achieve anything. Right. You just made it. You got a seat at the table now. So now what are you going to do? Because that seat can be taken away at any single day. Any day you walk into your Special Forces team and all your stuff can be in the hallway because you were a dirtbag.
Right.
So we got to keep that in the back of our mind, and we got to really understand that it is an honor and a privilege to be presented with so many opportunities in our lives. What are we going to do with them? And how are we going to earn them?
That's so
every
true.
Single day.
So true. And I love the fact that, because I think so many people are a lot of people are scared of success because of the fact that you said, like, a lot of people think they have to be perfect. They never have that, like, oh shit, we did the wrong thing today, or that didn't work out. How do I continue down the road? What are like 2 keys that you took away from when you're in Special Forces, or even in your business, that really helped you to say, these failures aren't fatal. They're actually growth points.
There's a concept called bounce back, and it's actually assessed. It's assessed in special operations selection and assessment, and it should be assessed in organizations. When organizations put together not only their talent acquisition plans, but when they also just are working on the professional development and the personal development of their teams and their leaders within their organization, the concept of bounce back should always be involved in that conversation, because we are going to fail. If you're not, people say, if you don't fail, you're not trying. Yeah, that's true. I think that's overused, but the reality is you got to try to do hard and cool things in life. I mean, that's it. Like, and that's not like a very, that's not a professor level, response to your question there.
But I love it though.
That to me, like that, I wake up every day and it's like, what can I do like in this podcast, in my business? That's like hard. It's cool. And I get to do it with great people. Like, and if I've done that, and then like the rest is going to work out. And so, but if you don't push that envelope and you don't seek to do those hard, cool things with great people, I think I think you're leaving something on the table. I think that there's opportunities that are going to be missed, and you don't know what you don't know. And you can wake up 20 years later, and say, hey, I lived a great life and I did some good things. And that's perfectly fine. But you got to think about what motivates you, what drives you. Right. And for me, like, I think that's what it comes down to. And bounce back is important because I got off on a tangent here, but bounce back is the ability to endure a failure, endure a setback, and get back up and get back at it. Okay, pitcher and Major League Baseball pitchers, perfect example. Quarterbacks, perfect example. You throw an interception, gets returned for a touchdown. You're right back on the field. Okay, and what are you going to do? You're going to throw another one because that one's in your head. You're going to move on, focus on what's at hand. Hey, look, it happened. Learn from it. Okay, now I understand. Move forward. Same for pitchers, right? You got to throw another pitch. Give up a home run. You're throwing another pitch, right? Within 45 seconds. So exactly. I mean, you got
no time to think.
Yeah. You got to get back on it. So you've got to think we have to think like that as leaders. We have to say I'm going to fail. And maybe it's catastrophic, right? Maybe it's catastrophic. I lose my job. I failed. I lost my job. I wasn't very good at what I was doing. Okay, fine. Why? Internalize it, understand it, show the humility, and then go do something else. Get back at it. I mean, we can't just sit back and hope that everything's going to be okay and it's going to work its way. It's going to work itself out. Everyone that's another thing a lot of people say, it'll work itself out. Okay. Nothing works itself out with a whole lot of hard work.
Right.
Okay. Like, it takes a whole lot of work to wake up and say it worked itself out. Yeah, maybe it did. And most likely most things in life will work themselves out with time. But I guarantee you that it's going to be a effort to do it. And we can't just go sit on our couch and stare out the window and hope for a different answer. We might do that for a day. We might do that for a couple of days. I know I've had points in my life where I've done that for a long time.
Right.
And then one day you wake up and you go, that's enough. What am I going to do? Take a stand, take action. Maybe it'll work. Maybe it won't, but any movement is better than no movement.
Right. It goes back to what you were saying earlier about humility. Because, all of the aspects in which you have done in your life, I mean, honestly, like you look at your resume and you go, wow, and then you talked earlier about something that went wrong with the podcast or whatnot. How do you teach people that humility, that you've built in yourself to be able to just continue to move forward? Because that is one of those things where a lot of these high executives and a lot of these athletes, the humility to say, yeah, I did screw up there. This is what I'm going to do to fix it. How do you do that?
I think I have a lot of thoughts on humility. So
most people who went through what you do sometimes do. Yeah.
I think that humility comes down to a level of confidence in yourself, and not arrogance, right? And so what's the difference between confidence and arrogance, right? Confidence, is arrogance is, confidence without humility, right? I truly believe that, if you think about the most arrogant person that right? If you can define that and put it in the back of your mind, picture their face.
Like everybody can.
Right. Yeah, who's the most arrogant person? Right? When did that person ever come forward and say, hey, I screwed up? Hey, I got this wrong. I think I didn't think through this, or something happened. That's on me, right? You don't have that. But there's a lot of competent and confident people who stand up and say, yep, I sucked today. Didn't intend to come here to suck. Didn't wake up this morning and go, I'm going to go to work or go to the game and just be horrible today. But I made a mistake. It happened. I wasn't, for whatever reason, right? You can name the reasons, and then they should be able to name the reasons. That's the real big difference when we talk about humility. But let me also say something else about humility. Humility does not mean that we should not be proud of ourselves. Okay.
That's a great point.
And this is where the LinkedIn trolls, I can't take it, because what you see are all these phrases with like, I'm humbled to, and I'm guilty of this too. It's only in the last like year where I've been like, dude, don't do that anymore. Like, I don't agree with that anymore. We change our opinions, right? We change our opinions in life.
Right.
And I say this because I'm sure I have a LinkedIn post said back, in some time where I've said, I'm humbled too. Well, I've changed my opinion. Okay. Call me a flip flopper or whatever.
Add delete it. Who cares?
Right? But why not just announce it? Why not just say, hey, I was the man today. I was the woman today. I crushed it today.
Right.
Because this happened to me. I got this award. Why are we saying I'm humbled to announce that I was voted best whatever? No, stand up and say, I worked my ass off every day to do this. And today's my day. And thank you everybody. Because I didn't get here by myself. I didn't do this on my own. I did it with all of you guys, and we're here, and let's be proud of that moment. But now I'm going to walk out of the room and I'm going to say, what else can I do?
Yeah.
I left something on the table. I missed something. I wasn't perfect. That's where humility comes in.
Yeah.
It's not when we achieve something and then we stand up and we say, it could not have been done any better. I am the best ever in the history of the world, and now everybody else
like that. Tell me you don't have a post like that.
I don't have a post like that. And
okay,
and bow down to me, and forever it will not be made better than I've done it. That's arrogance. Yeah. That's not humility, right? And the people who went someone like Tom Brady, Bill Belichick. You look at these organizations that have won consistently over time, dynasties. I've had a great conversation last year with Dr. Jack Stark, who was the Nebraska. He was the performance development coach for Nebraska football in their heyday, and worked with Hendrick Motorsports for 8 championships. You talk about building dynasties. That's what they do. They win, and then they walk in the room and they go, "Hey, that was awesome, guys. Let's high five. Let's have a few beers. Let's celebrate this. And tomorrow, get your ass in here because here's what we fucked up."
Yeah. It's so now this is, I don't know if you felt the same thing with your podcast, but it's so awesome to be able to tell other people's stories, and just exactly what you're talking about. It just accentuates the points that a lot of people may read in an article or may see in a post. But when you hear a story from, an individual that went through it, like I see that you had Tim Kennedy and you had, Bridges on your thing, and so many different people that they can tell those stories from the trenches and have them also relate to people. How powerful is that to you to be able to be that person that delivers those stories to those individuals?
That's the impact I was talking about. And so I joked that, well, I didn't joke. I said that if I wanted to be a journalist, I could, I could do that. I could do that later in my life. Right. And so, that's kind of the decision I made 2 years ago. I said, listen, it was in the middle of COVID and I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And, I was sitting there and I'm like, well, I'm still paying Boston University for the undergraduate degree in journalism. It's been 20 years. So I might as well try to capitalize on this ROI. And I joke with my wife that I traded in my gun for a keyboard and a microphone. And I've even run around the house joking, this is my weapon now.
Not this is my rifle. This is my gun. This one's for shooting. This one's for, no, not that. Okay.
No, this is my Shure microphone and my MacBook. Ever seen GarageBand? It's awesome. But like that's the impact. I believe, for me, like that's the impact that I can make today is by telling these stories. I can tell people's perspectives in a way that resonates with I like to say, everybody, but I also understand that that's not reality. There are people who don't like me. That's fine. I don't, that's not my audience. There are people who listen and watched every single episode and send me a note, and that's awesome too. I love those people. But like my goal is to be able to tell these stories of impactful people in different, who all come from a different perspective and have a different spin on it. And we've done 120 episodes, and like, if you're not going to like 120 episodes, but you might like 5, might like 10, I hope you like 20 to 30, right? That are going to resonate with you. And there's going to be a lot that people don't care about.
Right.
But like, what happens when we have 500? What happens when we have 1,000? That's when we're going back and it's like, damn, there are so many episodes in here that anybody can go in and say, wow, I care about this. I care about these types of stories. I care about this type of background because that's what I'm trying to be. You mentioned Josh Bridges. I think about something Josh Bridges said and told me every single day. And he said, we don't train to get it right. He said, we don't train until we get it right. We train until we can't get it wrong.
See, I love Josh.
And that is such a powerful statement.
Right.
Because that's a standard.
Oh, it's huge.
That's a standard. And the difference between getting it right once and not getting it wrong is vast.
Yeah.
That is a greater distance. I would argue that is a greater distance to travel than 0 to getting it right. Yeah. I can grab my driver, okay, and go to the driving range on the golf course, put 10 balls out and nail 1 of 10.
Yeah.
Okay. I cannot put 100 out and nail 100.
Yeah.
Okay. And that is the difference between being a regular person or being average at what you do and being elite at what you do.
And everybody has the opportunity to be elite. They just have to put in that time and that effort and have that mindset, right?
Yeah, and define what elite is to you.
Yes. Oh, that's a huge point.
I think that's the most important thing.
That's the biggest point.
I every day I get up and I go into my, I have a Peloton treadmill. Okay. And I get on the treadmill and I say, I'm going to be elite today. And very quickly I realized better define elite because
you turn it off and you're like, okay, I'm out.
Yeah. It's almost 43 years old. And like, the one that says, 20, the couple of people who say 20s and are far ahead of you. Right. And I'm not going to be a professional athlete. I'm not going to be a professional CrossFit athlete. We've done a lot with CrossFit for this last year. We have a lot coming up with CrossFit. Actually, I'm going this weekend to get CrossFit Level 1 certified.
Oh, awesome.
That was a byproduct of our coverage of Wadapalooza. So Jesse Graff and I have been invited by CrossFit to go out to California. Me go out, she's already there, to get certified as CrossFit instructors, right? And I'm not going to compete with Josh Bridges or Rich Froning or damn near anybody who competes at these events. But is it important to me? Yeah. Is it going to help me become a better version of myself? Yes. Will I become better physically? Yeah. Will I become better at covering CrossFit events as a journalist? Completely. Absolutely.
Right.
And to me, if that's my definition of elite, then that's a win.
That's a perfect statement that you just said, because it's so important for people to understand their uniqueness. It's so important for people to understand that they are their own person, because so many people base themselves or base their whole ego, but also their vision of what elite or successful is on other people, and that's not possible. That's
I'm not. I work with the Boston University men's rowing team. Yeah, and I used to be on the team, And I look at these kids now and I'm like, I can't like to even think that I was as good as they are is not even reality. So you've got to just you got to ground yourself in, what are you trying to achieve, and where are you in your life, and what are you focused on, and what is success for you?
Right. I love that. Make sure you go to the Jedburgh Podcast. There's so many great guests that you've had, and you're just going to continue to make more and more podcasts, aren't you? You love it.
I love it. We've got we've got 2, 8, 10. We got 10 in the hopper right now. We're a couple weeks away. February 22nd, we will start our Wadapalooza series release. We'll release 8 episodes in 6 weeks. I was joined by Ninja Warriors and stunt woman Jessie Graff. She was my guest on episode 30. And so when I was invited to go cover Wadapalooza, like one of the biggest fitness festivals in the country, I was like, who's the fittest person I know who will be awesome to spend some time with and put together some really great interviews. And I called Jessie and she jumped on, and we had a great time down in Miami. So February 22nd, we'll start releasing that series to 6 weeks, 8 episodes. That'll be really great coverage down there from the stage in Wadapalooza. And then we'll move on. We'll go. We got CrossFit games. We got not CrossFit. We have Go Ruck games. Sandlot Jacks coming up in April. I'm going to San Diego this week. We have a couple of awesome episodes that'll kind of come in between those 2 big events that we're going to record this week in San Diego that I got to reserve release announcement for at least until Friday. And then so I'm pretty excited about that. And
love it.
We're just gonna keep plugging. That's it.
I love it. You're going to be back up in Wisconsin coming up for the CrossFit games.
I'm hoping. Yeah. So after
you get up here, we're going to have to connect here.
All right. That sounds great. I love you.
Definitely. I love it. All right. I end all my podcasts the same way. And it's 3 questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
How do you say your last name? No, I'm just kidding. I had to do it to myself. So if you could go back to your 18-year-old self and ask yourself, give yourself one piece of advice, what would that be?
Shut your mouth.
I love that.
When in doubt, shut your mouth, because my mouth has certainly humbled me a number of times and often continues to do so.
And now you do your podcast. I love it. Now, a lot of people are going through challenges and struggles, and that's pretty much consistent no matter what time period or whatever it is. What are 2 habits that you'd say, hey, incorporate these daily to continue to move forward?
You have to take some time for yourself. And that's really hard. And honestly, I said, I'm 2 years into this podcast, and I asked a very similar question at the end. I ask about the 3 things that they do every day to be successful, and I tie it back to the Jedburghs and the need to be able to shoot, move, and communicate. And I had so many people tell me, I meditate, I work out, I take time for myself, I go for a walk. And I would always say, oh, that's awesome. I don't need to do those things. And then we had a 3rd kid in October. And for anyone
I have 3.
goes, okay, so that the difference from 1 to 2 is nothing compared to the difference from 2 to 3, right? It's from 2 to 3 is like an exponential change.
Yep.
And now since then was where I really started saying to myself, you've got to just take that time and stop what you're doing. There's always going to be something you have to do. Whether it's family or work or whatever, there's always going to be something you have to do. And if it's 30 minutes, it's 30 minutes. If it's 20 minutes, it's 20 minutes. If you get an hour, that's awesome. But you got to go out and do something by yourself. Whether it's take a walk, I go and I work out and I hit the treadmill, I work out, whatever it is. Yep. So that would be the number one thing that I would say, because that's going to help kind of reset. That's where you'd be able to disengage and just think. I had a boss who well, he wasn't my boss, but he was a general. And when I was in the Army, and he said this thing once, he said, leaders need time to think. And obviously I was, a young officer, and I'm like, that's stupid. What do you mean leaders need time to think? This old man doesn't know what he's talking about.
Right.
Just make a decision, shut your mouth. And as I've gotten older, right, I've come to that realization that he was, as most generals are, right? Something comes from being on Earth longer. He was absolutely right, and sometimes you just need time to disengage, and and if you run on the treadmill, you're going for a walk, you're sitting outside, staring into the woods, whatever it is, that's valuable time to think about stuff. The other thing is. I reach out to somebody every day. We talk a lot about mental health. We talk a lot about the struggles that we have. And I don't care what anybody says. Humans are collaborative by nature. Humans seek interaction with people. Humans do not thrive well in isolation. They so don't thrive well when they're alone. And people think that, nobody cares about them. People don't care about me. I don't need to care about anybody. I don't need to talk to anybody. Yeah, you do. Yes, you do.
So true. Yeah.
And if you think that, like, you're just fooling yourself, and you're making life hard, and some of that doesn't have to be hard. So, reach out to somebody, talk to somebody, anybody. You don't have to have a 45-minute conversation about the last 6 months of their life. Send someone a text, say hi, whether it be your family, your kids, your spouse, your parents, your friend, just reach out and say hi to somebody.
I love those too. It's so powerful. The biggest thing that I love about you is that you can sense the passion. And it's always one of those things, especially when you do just an audio podcast, you can always sense the passion behind when somebody's talking, and you have that definitely, and it really comes through. I appreciate that.
I'm a all or nothing guy.
I like that.
That's it's like well, we used to have dials, for volume.
Yep.
And there's 0 and there's 10. And so I either I don't care and whatever, or I'm all in.
I love that. You're the 10 on the UHF channel, right?
Sometimes an 11.
All right, this last one's gonna be fun. So if you could sit down at a firehouse table with 3 individuals, they can be deceased or alive, and at a firehouse table you can have any questions and they have to answer it. Who would those people be and why? This is gonna be interesting. I have a feeling.
I got to sit down at a firehouse table with a number of Boston fire departments. It was one of the honestly one of the highlights of my, not only my career as a podcaster, but my life. I really enjoyed it. It was really impactful. Plus, being from Boston, it was really cool. Okay. So listen, I'm really big. I studied political science. The U.S. presidency was my focus. And I'm fascinated by the American presidency. So I would sit down with George Washington.
Oh, I love that.
Because there's actually, I even did my hair for this, and there's no video. But I did my hair. I mean, I put a hat on. So, but behind me sits a it's not a poster, it's a picture, and it's of George Washington on a horse, and it says, first in war, first in peace, first in the hearts of his countrymen. And I truly believe that. I truly believe that that as a leader, you gotta be, you have to inspire people in the good. You got to inspire people in the bad. And they don't have to love you, but they gotta want to be there alongside you, to achieve the goal. And I think, George Washington exemplifies that. I think the second one is John F. Kennedy. I think that I don't know what the world would be like today had we not lost John F. Kennedy. And I think
that's a huge statement. I love that.
I think it's an interesting question that I've often toyed with. Maybe one day I'll do a piece on it now that I've said it out loud here. But if you just think about like that period of time, if you think about the decisions that were made, by leaders after him, I think it's I think it is an absolutely very important question that we should ask.
Right.
And so I find that I think that would be another interesting one. And the other one, the other one that I would like to sit there for my presidential roundtable.
Is this whiskey or coffee?
I think it would be a bit of both.
I think so.
I think you put the whiskey in the coffee.
There you go.
I think the last one would be Ronald Reagan. And this is a very bipartisan effort here. I'm very centrist. So I believe, and the reason why I say that is, I think Ronald Reagan, there's a book called by Peggy Noonan, and she was his speechwriter, one of his advisors, and it's called When Character Was King. And I think that post Ronald Reagan, we have seen the decline of American politics. I think we've seen a very difficult period that we remain in with the divisiveness of American politics. And I think he was a unifying figure. And I think that we need more leaders who are able to unify the country. And you don't unify the country and the world by standing up in front of everyone and saying, we need to unify, we need to get together, and then, turn it around and go different. Let's slam these guys,
Yeah.
Like, unification is not like standing up in front of everyone and saying, we need to unite as a country. But these guys over here are obviously not allowing that to happen.
Yeah, okay, it doesn't work
that's not a unifying statement, right? Like, and so what we've got to do is we need leadership in companies, in athletics, in government, who are able to stand up and just take action. You asked me the first question, what would I tell my 18-year-old self? I said, shut your mouth.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes we need our leaders to shut their mouth and take action.
That is one of the greatest statements right there. I like that. That's a shirt.
That is a shirt.
That's a shirt. Have the Jedburgh Podcast in the front, and then say, shut your mouth and take action. There you go. I want that.
We're looking at. I recently launched a store on Instagram, which was a real pain in the ass, by the way. But
this is going to be a shirt.
But that's a good one. I should make that shirt.
Shut your mouth and take action. That is a freaking shirt and a half right there. I love it. See, look at this. This whole time, we've taken this whole time and we figured out one of the greatest things I did.
That's it. He made no money on the podcast, but he sold a lot of shirts that said, shut your mouth and take action.
I love it. Hey, Fran, it has been such an honor to have you on today. Make sure you go to the Jedburgh Podcast and listen to all those great podcasts, and definitely look forward to the Wadapalooza and all the things to come from you. So thanks so much for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Robin. If I come to Madison, we'll grab a coffee and a beer.
I love it. And maybe the whiskey
and a whiskey.
Coffee.
And a whiskey.
Yeah, there you go.
All of it.
And maybe find a guy that's name is George Washington.
Thanks for listening and supporting the Forged in the Fires podcast with Fireman Rob. Remember, don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast, and please share this episode with a friend or family. To find out more about Fireman Rob or reach out about a question, go to www.firemanrob.com. Until next time, live your life forged in the fires.